Hello, everybody. Lovely to see all of you here for another session of Humans of HR, where we are in conversation with Mr. Chand Narayan. And today's topic is something that's very close to our hearts. This is something that we've been talking about, we've been consulting on, we've been working with a lot of leaders on this very specific thing. And we strongly believe this could be one of the strongest pillars in establishing a fabulous culture within the organization. Many times it relegates itself to just another checklist. But honestly, very good HR professionals or impactful HR professionals kind of understand the value behind it, and they are able to unpack that layer by layer, creating a fabulous experience for people within the organization. And today we are talking about how can an HR professional or an HR leader build a culture of learning within the organization. Because we understand the market today is changing at a crazy pace. And many times catching up becomes the rule of the game. But then there are some people who are able to plan and create a culture of learning where the cream is always slightly ahead of the curve, which surely translates into a fantastic value for the organization going forward. So this is strategic, this is long term. This could help keep people in the game. This could retain fabulous resources and just give the edge to the organization. So all that put together in one single topic, that's how do we create a culture of learning. So that's the topic, Chief. How do we go about this conversation today?
I think we start at the very beginning. I think evolutionary anthropology is one of my favorite topics nowadays. I enjoy reading a lot on.
Always, always. Say always, Chief. Say always.
So, so I think here is an interesting. So let me start with what you asked, and then maybe I'll elaborate a little bit. I think there is no choice. Every organization has to be a learning organization for the simple fact that human beings are learning organisms. It is inherent, it is inbuilt. It is another one of our softwares, which is very strong because of the evolutionary processes that have selected for it and over the last 6.5 million years. And so if the organization doesn't choose to be a learning organization and create mechanisms and processes and an agenda for learning, the organization will create by default its own agenda, which may not be what the founders wanted or the leaders wanted. I mean, one of the things that we always hear is that if you do a crime and then go to jail, it's like going to graduate school. You become better at it when by the time you come out. Find a lot of mentors. So, there is a learning agenda that's always happening. Either you own it or it owns you. So I think it's a very stark choice. Now, from evolutionary anthropology, yes, I think I would suggest a brilliant book called The 10 Types of Human. I think the author's name is Dexter. And his proposition in that book, of course, it's a brilliantly written book. I highly encourage every HR professional to read it. It's a thickish book. It will take time, but it is worth the time invested. And his proposition there, he's a lawyer, by the way, who got interested into what makes human beings behave the ways that they do. And his proposition there is that the brain as an organ is not a single organ. There are 10 different types of brains that have 10 different processes that are happening in the brain parallel. There are 10 different people inside the brain. And each one has a unique process, and each one has a unique, read it. But I want to take up two of from a different perspective. One of the things that evolutionary anthropologists differentiate between human beings and the other apes as well as other mammals. So the Max Planck Institute, for example, is a place where primate behavior is deeply researched. And, surprisingly, there is a saying that monkey see and monkey do, which implies that monkeys will copy another monkey's behavior. But actually, I remember a small video on from the Max Planck Institute. Maybe people should look up some of these videos. They're fascinating, typically with chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans. And here, what they establish very clearly is a monkeys are, or rather apes, whether it is chimpanzees or gorillas, their short-term memory is far better than human beings. They will, the spatial memory is much better. They are brilliant. They're at the genius level as compared to humans in certain aspects, including mathematics, calculation of probability, politics. Chimpanzees are better at politics, and I think I mentioned that earlier. So one wonders.
That I won't contest.
That's a little politically incorrect, Harish. You might get into trouble for not contesting it. Uh,
You mean more trouble?
so there are two clear processes that neuroscientists find that differentiate humans from all the other mammals and the apes as well. And one is a iterative learning process. Human beings like fiddling with things, and they keep learning, especially where there are a lot of variables and it is difficult to master something. The best example that can be given is cycling. When you're trying to cycle, learn how to cycle, balance on two wheels, it's not easy. And or skating, for that example. More practically, lapping the quartz rocks for the sharp edges, obsidian for creating sharp edges that can be used as cutting tools, hunting tools, etc. Now that requires a lot of patience. It requires iteration. You do it once, and then you figure out. You control for one variable, most variables, and you try one variable and you see how it works. And that's how, for example, we learn cycling. That's how we learn music. That's how we learn language. We control all the other variables and try out one. How do I fall while trying to balance? And then over a period of time, you keep mastering one after the other factor, till a time comes when that capability, that skill becomes kind of unconscious skill. And those are learning ladders as well that we talk about in training. How you bring it from conscious effort to an unconscious skill, unconscious mastery. And human beings have that, right? Uh, it is the distinguishing thing. They will do this all the time. They will put their minds onto something and they will try and master it, and they'll go about it. Whether it is learning how to wolf whistle. I remember, somebody challenged me that you're no good because you can't wolf whistle, and I spent an entire night, kept the house awake till early in the morning. I was able to finally be satisfied with the quality of the wolf whistle. I got a good hiding later on when my dad woke up. But yeah, that's how we build. The second iterative process there is the emotive, empathic, empathetic process, where we relate with others. We we work together in social groups. So we also keep kind of trying to figure out what's the variable, how should I act, what should I say, what should I not say, how should I, etc. So these two combined together create all the learning that we see in our lives. So both, so I like therefore to distinguish hard skills and soft skills with these two different processes. This is inbound. This is inherent in us. So back to you. As organizations, we need to choose an agenda and we need to create a learning agenda, irrespective of what organization where are you in your life cycle, etc. From day one, the founder should think about what is the learning agenda for people as they join. That learning agenda could change. It could kind of uh,
Evolve.
small. It could become bigger. It could kind of focus more on certain aspects, soft skills. But you need to have an agenda. So back to you.
Very interesting. Now, I'm not going to take names of organizations, but we've seen some of the biggest and the best in the country, where there was a founding team, and when they exited, the next gen leadership was not ready. And uh, the reasons could be many, but for somebody like me standing by the sites, it feels like the whole learning mechanism was not put in place to kind of help create leaders from within. And then many a times there are, and for the second case that I'm talking about, there are umpteen examples of an outsider coming in and the culture being different, and then there is friction, and then things fall through the gap, and then again the whole churn starts all over again. So when it comes to learning, yes, there are things, there are skill level learnings, but especially when it comes to finding the next in line, grooming the next in line leadership, what kind of learning experience should be created? What kind of processes could be put in place just to make sure that the next gen leader comes from within and not from outside?
Wonderful question. So let me start from the founder downwards. So the founder has to hire a team, has to get some people in who really directly to the founder. Now, so how is the founder figuring out the right people? And that's a journey. We ask founders if they were lucky, and it's more by accident than by design, unless they worked together earlier, and they were roommates, and so they know each other really well, and they get along with each other. Uh, get along in the sense that they're able to work together well, even if they fight like cats and dogs. In some close relationships are like that, but they're able to get stuff accomplished. And that's what business is about. And so the first thing that they need to learn is about how do I go about figuring out who are the right people to take on. So interviewing skills, understanding about the interviewing process or the selection process is a larger
Mhm.
piece.
Correct.
You and I do a lot of interviewing skills training for the managers, for the leaders. One of the most important things to do, and you cannot invest enough, especially at the initial period of the organization's growth, in terms of getting the right people on board. Because the moment you're able to get the right people, and I would like to kind of delve a little more into the right people, but maybe in another podcast. But uh, founders do have some wisdom and some understanding, and can sense value alignment or not, passion for what they're doing, or does this person have it or not. And if the person does have it, then it's a question of time before they pick up the skills for making things happen. um, However, as you start scaling up, and that's the typical challenge that founders face, is that their own passion is rubbing off on their direct reports, but not on the next level. And unless they have equipped the next level guys to be able to pass on that passion and that perspective, the values, and what this is about, the essence of what they're trying to do. If they've not been able to light a spark, or kind of nurture the natural spark that people come with, the organization is going to lose competence or lose efficacy as you go down lower, to a point where the organization looks and sounds and feels very different from what the founder wanted it to be. And
Mhm.
you see that especially in organizations that have a lot of different layers. And typically, most government organizations have a lot of different layers. And so, I mean, it's not that the person who's heading that organization doesn't want to provide good services or good experience to to the clients, customers, people who are dependent on them for their services. But somewhere, all everything is lost by the time. It's like a case of Chinese whispers, the game that
Mhm.
you play to demonstrate that by the time you reach the end of the line, nothing of the original is there. It's a completely dysfunctional thing that the last person in the line has picked up. And so there has to be a conscious effort, both in terms of process training or what is called, work process related training, as well as in terms of soft skills and how to deal with your own team members and colleagues, and how do you deal with the external stakeholders, whether it is a customer, a client, a partner, a vendor, regulator, competitor, whoever it may be. So I think, again, this points to the fact that one has to think through deeply in terms of what is the learning that you need in the organization, and then how do you ensure that it happens on a regular basis and it happens in the right amount. And there is a trade-off. How much time are you putting in terms of generating and servicing a business vis-a-vis how much time are you investing in training people to do both of these well.
Mm,
Obviously,
mm,
at the
mm.
beginning of an organization's life, you don't want to invest too much time apart from focusing on building the business and delivering the business. And also, it is a fact that the larger organizations have have more bandwidth to be able to devote resources to invest in training people upfront. I mean, all the large organizations that are our clients, we can clearly see that they invest a lot of time and effort in onboarding people and training them in the first month of their onboarding, uh, especially in terms of the critical areas where they need them to start delivering value. So, with that, back to you.
Nice, nice, nice. Yes, yes. Obviously, with scale, we have seen that they are able to invest and earmark the time and resources required to upskill people. Now, many often, I personally come across people who very strongly believe that the people who will help your organization grow from 1 to 10x are not the people who will help your organization go from 10x to 100x. But I always prefer tweaking that a little bit to say that the skills that will help you grow from 1 to 10x and the skills that will help you go from 10 to 100x is different. The
Applicable.
people could still be the same,
Hmm.
but as long as the people are upskilling themselves, we can continue working the same set of people. And this thought many times translates to the leaders assuming that if you need a critical resource, throwing money at it will help you get that. But many times in a tough market, that's not the reality. So there is a huge business angle to the learning calendar of an organization. And many times the organizations wake up and smell the coffee, and the train's already gone. So, what would be your suggestion to leaders, given the current scenario where the market changes, the requirement changes, the technical the landscape is changing. So, how can the leader keep pace with this?
I think you've wonderfully put this. And so I want to repeat one phrase that you used, which was on, uh, remind me what you said right at the beginning about uh,
The
what was,
people who help you go from zero
so,
to X, and not the people.
yeah, so I think one is that the role evolves, especially when you're a startup and you start scaling up. The role has to evolve. Where you were very sharply focused on certain things, now you have to look at a bigger domain. And it was about throwing money, right? You know,
Yeah.
in fact, I would go so far as to say that throwing money at a problem is the worst thing that any business founder can do. Money is the worst thing that you can use for solving a problem, because the problem is not going to go away. It's going to come and bite you in the back. And so you got to do real stuff. Money is it can buy you a little bit of time or can give you a reassurance that I've done something about it. And in that, so far, it's good. but it's not going to solve your problem. The real solution lies in helping people become capable of doing that. Now, you asked about, when the environment is changing and, it's evolving very fast. So what do founders and leaders do to keep abreast of that? And the answer is that keep communicating, keep sharing the reality, keep, and when I say sharing, to have a constant dialogue. And I'll give you an example. The critical time in the evolution of an organization that I was working for, and suddenly the organization is scaling up like crazy, and so people are feeling a little overwhelmed, saying, yeah, we're just trying to stay sane and work through every day. And here comes the founder, pulls in everybody in, and says this to them. And I was very lucky to be in that room, and I remember it. I can never forget it. He says, the quality of work that you're putting out, you think that's the best. I'm telling you that your audience is, or your target audience is ready to take, they're 8 years ahead of you in terms of, what you can give them. And he gave very specific examples. And that in that room, the light bulbs went on. And everybody said, what he's saying is right. And we were trying to kind of just think that, look, will this run, will this not, will this work? We need to forget about that. We need to say, what's the best that we can create? Because there is an audience that is ready for it. And so it's the founder's ability to keep reorienting, to keep, if not the founders alone, but also the professional team that comes in, whether it is the professional CEO, the professional function heads, etc. They also need to kind of keep getting engaged in this dialogue with the teams and keep helping them. Um, I remember one of these large multinationals that does it as a systemic process is that they have these periodic meetings, which is called the Pulse, and where you have a representative sample from the organization from every level, and which is where you collect market intelligence, share market intelligence. What are the competitors doing? What's happening? What are the trends? What does the data say? What does the business say? What are we seeing? What are we sensing? What do you think? What information do you think is relevant? So there is a churning that happens inside that room at a organization-wide scale. It's still a sample. You can only have maybe 200 people in the room and do a dialogue, do a conversation, hold a idea exchange and stuff. But and it was done fairly regularly with different sets of people. So whoever was there in the last one is not there in the next. But you keep churning. You keep kind of going back and sharing and helping understand what is the new reality, because it's the new reality for you when you are a startup is not the same when you become 20 people, is not the same when you become 40 people, is not the same when you become 200 people, is not the same when you become 800 people. And these are numbers that I'm consciously taking. When you're 20, you're struggling to get more people on board because your business is growing and you're kind of stretched. At 40, you start realizing that there is some politicking that is happening, and there's some dynamics that are emerging that you don't like. And at 100 and at 200, you start losing people. You say, hey, I'm doing my best to get the best people, providing. However, people are choosing to go away from me. There must be something wrong, and they're going away, far too quickly for my comfort. So, what is it that we're not getting right? And if the founders and the leadership is not very self-resolved, they will start blaming the person who is going away without understanding what is the root cause and where is the challenge. And that's where I think when you have instituted a fairly robust learning agenda, it doesn't matter whether you do X number. I mean, the way you measure training is I think very stupid. How does training hours, a number of trainings, a number of people, it has no meaning. I think it needs to be seen in terms of the relevance of what you were doing. If the organization needs to scale up, even before they have started the process of scaling up, people who are going to be involved in the hiring need to be taught how to interview people. How do you convey in practice the values that you stand for? It has to be demonstrated through the interview process. We've talked about it in terms of what is the experience that a person who's called for an interview gets. Now, once you have people on board, you need to help them figure out what are the ways in which you interface with each other. What are the norms? And when in doubt, what do you do? So, very important to talk about, look at attitude, look at feedback skills for the managers. How are they giving feedback? Are they having these tough conversations or difficult conversations that they need to have? And they're not avoiding it, or they're not handling it badly. And so, that's it has to come ahead of the curve. You can't kind of lose control on the narrative. You lose control on the behaviors, and then reflexively pull back, try and correct it. It's too late by then. You've already kind of earned a reputation in the market, and that makes the getting in the next lot that much more difficult, that much costlier. And you start getting mercenaries. You will say, yeah, they pay well, but that's throwing money at the problem. But I've heard this said about a particular company in uh, large company where the owner was extremely abusive. So the saying that went around was that you get paid 3 times, 3x in that organization as compared to other organizations, and fully 2x is for listening to the founders or the owners' galis. Now, is that why you're having to throw more money? It's a problem. You will have to, money is a given, but there are a lot of things beyond that which can make or break your scaling up journey and your efficacy as an organization in being able to find and keep uh, talent that's absolutely brilliant for you. So back to you.
Hmm.